Hi everyone, welcome to the Wednesday seminar series by Migration Research Center at Koç University, Koç. For the last 2 years, we are organizing our seminar series under the Broader project. Broader is the Bridging Migration and Urban Studies project. It's a European Union funded twinning project. It's a collaboration between Koç University in Turkey, Pompeu Fabra University in Spain, and the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. You can always follow us on Koç and Broader website and social media accounts because we have our upcoming activities including seminars, talks,
Merhabalar. Müsaitim. Şuraya bağla. Bir saniye.
training sessions and conferences on topics related to migration and urban studies. Today we have Giovanna Marconi. She is an associate professor of urbanism at University of Venice. Where she is also the director of the research center, which is a UNESCO chair on the social and spatial inclusion of international migrants, urban policies and practices. We are happy to note that her research center and ours, Koç, previously collaborated on another European Union funded project titled Managing International Urban Migration, exploring migration dynamics in cities of Turkey, Italy, and Spain. And Professor Marconi's research focuses on the urban inclusion of international migrants, local governance of migration in cities, and south-to-south international migration. We are excited to have Giovanna Marconi as our guest today and to hear her talk titled Sharing Public Spaces, Urban Planning and Policy in Cities of Differences. Following the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. Please feel free to prepare and write your questions in the chat box or the Q&A box, or you can just, during the Q&A session, you can just unmute yourself and ask your questions directly. Now, I would like to give the floor to Professor Marconi.
Thank you, Belina, and thank you, of course, to Koç to invite me to this seminar series. And yes, as you said, we had an interesting collaboration years ago, and hope we'll have further opportunities for collaboration. Let me try to share my screen for the presentation. Okay. Can you see the?
Yes, see your presentation.
Okay, so city and migration and city and diversity is actually the main topic we work on at the UNESCO chair at the University of Venice. So this presentation comes out from different researches we carried out and our experiences also. I'm an urban planner, by the way, so for the university teaching, urban planning and design. And so we see migration actually from an urban point of view, and the impact of international migration on our cities is the bulk of our teaching and research. Today, speaking about mainly focusing on public spaces in cities of differences. I cannot go on with the screen. Let me see. It doesn't work. Let me see. Did it change? Great. So, as you are all focused on migration studies, this is nothing new to you. Castells and Miller time ago were speaking about the 20th century as the age of migration. And we know that migrants worldwide went on growing in the past decades, even if they grow a lot as absolute number, while as share of the world population is not so high, because also the world population has been growing fast, no, in the last decades. So international migrants are always between 3 and 4% of the world population. In any case, Castell and Miller, they are now at the 6th edition of this book, The Age of Migration, addressed this issue that more migrants in the world today than ever before. What is important from an urban planning point of view is also that in the same decades, urbanization went on as a phenomenon around the world, to the point that in 2008 we had the so-called urban turn. More people worldwide living in urban areas than those living in rural areas. So our world is more and more urban. And as you can see from the graph, this trend is expected to go on in the next years and decades, to the point that for 2030, that is tomorrow, let's say, we expect to have 60% of the world population living in cities. If you match these two issues, the fact that migrants are growing, but more people is living in cities, it's easy to understand that international migration is actually mainly and a big urban issues. I mean, cities are the engines of growth, so are those environment attracting more migrants? Of course, migrants also go to rural areas, especially for working in agriculture, etc. But the bulk of migrants head towards cities, and not only the big metropolis, but also medium-sized cities. Many times in Europe also small, medium-sized cities, but in any case, urban areas. Why? Because it's in cities that people know they can find the better opportunities to access better living conditions, to access the employment market, the housing market, to have information, the support from ethnic networks, etc. UNHCR also tells us that more than half of the world of the refugees in the world also live in urban areas. So actually, international migration is an urban issue, and for us, studying the city is a relevant issue that is increasing the diversity in city. Any population, urban population, is heterogeneous. Vertovec was speaking about since a few years, I believe 10 years by now, about super diversity. That is something like an adaptation to urban environments of what sociologists call intersectionality. No, so each group is diverse for different reasons, and may be more or less vulnerable to social and spatial inclusion due to his or her characteristics. If you are a migrant and a woman and only mother and maybe sub-Saharan African and poor, is a sum of vulnerabilities that has to be taken into account when we speak about urban inclusion and integration. And according to Vertovec, this fits into the term of super diversity he conceived. And urban population is also complex because we don't have just residents, but we have also city users. And urban population is always in fast changing. I mean, changing much faster than, of course, the physical cities, the buildings, the spaces, etc. And so urban population is changing more faster than also urban policies normally that are expected to respond to the new demands for the city. So this diversity challenges a lot urban governance and urban spaces, because there is actually a multiplication of the ways in which urban spaces are framed, used, perceived, appropriated by different groups. This is nothing new for cities. I mean, cities have always been places of differences, places of encounter of different culture, of different people, to the point that, I mean, since the very beginning, Aristotle was saying in 350 before Christ that not only cities are composed by a plurality of people, but this people is different because there is no city built from similar people. So city difference and diversity is a basic characteristic of any city. Of course, international migration fed and amplified this complexity, because the groups of people living together are from different cultures, different countries of origin, different ways of using some spaces, different spatial needs in terms of public spaces. When we observe the local level, we always, as a research group, I say we as a research group, always try to separate two bulk of policies. I mean, we call more migration policies, those policies, of the international governance of migration. So migration policies are those set at the national level that impose visa condition, define the condition for legal admission, how long people can stay, how which documents. Are those same policies implementing border controls and externalization of border controls as well? And what is at stake is the national interest. But what we are focusing much more on is what we call migrant policies, that are those policies set at the local level, at the urban level, that are, let's say, addressing the multiculturality in our cities, or not addressing, but it's something, all those policies and practices that try to govern changing population and the changing population that is increasingly diverse. What is at stake with those migrant policies is actually integration of migrants, inclusion of migrants, but also social cohesion of the whole local community. A point when we look at migration policies at the urban level, so migrant policy, is that we can, I mean, any local government or political discourse at the local level can be, pro or against migration, to say the two edges, but have an ideal of wanting or not wanting migrants, but at the state of the art, migrants are there, so something has to be done. If you want them or not, if they are there, there is people in your city, if you are a mayor or a policymaker, who came from different countries and who is living there formally or informally, legally or illegally, but it's an urban issue, no? So local governments has to cope with the presence of migrants in their city, and it's not an option of saying, oh, yes, I want them, or I don't want, they are there. And in doing this, they have to respond to several new demands for the city, and this is demands in terms of space, and we will see some examples. This is, of course, a great responsibility. What is important to understand is also that also ignoring the presence of these people, particularly what is ignored normally is you know, those undocumented migrants who hang around and have sometimes not much access to services, but ignoring the presence or the diversity in cities and having no policies for inclusion or for the governance of the phenomenon is to be, in any case, considered a policy and has effect. So if at the local level you decide, oh, I do nothing, I don't care, this is, in any case, a political decision that has effects at the urban level. In terms of local management of international migration, we always have to speak about in terms of governance, because luckily not just it's not just the local administration deciding everything or providing services, etc., but particularly in Western countries, but also in many other, the role of civil society organization, NGOs, and also associations, sometimes also informal groups, is important to help governing increasing diversity in our urban societies. The main challenges at the local level are in terms of rights, the right to be part of, for migrants, I mean, of course, to be part of the local society. We have challenges in terms of socio-spatial fragmentation, also for settlement in different parts of the city. And also about the fact that in the city we are sharing the same public spaces. So diversity in public spaces is visible, and people living in a city are sharing the same spaces. How at the local level these three issues are dealt with led to a more or less inclusive urban environment. Let's see, addressing these three key challenges in a way or in another make a city more or less inclusive. I go fast on this, but in terms of right, no, the first challenge, we frame it always in terms of right to the city. That is a phrasing by Lefebvre, no, who was thinking that all residents, all people living in a city have the right to the opportunity the city offer. And to understand which right people has, in general, no migrant has, but people has in a city, it's very important to understand who is considered by law, is perceived by local population and handled by local authorities as a resident, as an urban citizen, and so as part of the urban society. Which groups of migrants are more or less included in the city? Of course, the easiest example is that undocumented migrants have much more challenge to have full right to the city, but not only undocumented migrants, because we often have discrimination or institutional also discrimination against people with migrant background, and so the perception, for example, by local population of people coming from different countries, and particularly if I think about Italy, but Europe in general, not all migrants are perceived in the same way. You know, if a migrant comes from the Japan, United States, or even another EU country, is perceived well differently from migrants from East Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa. But it's very important to understand at the local level what are the rights, in any case, provided to and granted to people with migrant background and the migrant with different legal status, actually to understand the different degrees of entitlement, not to the right to the city. Of course, if you are invisible, so not documented, etc., is often difficult to be granted some rights and claim rights, even if, once again, governance and civil society organization often work, but sometimes also some municipalities, I have several cases in Spain, work for the inclusion or at least the respect of rights also for undocumented migrants who are living in their cities. National citizenship is at the roots of exclusion of migrants exclusion of migrants at the local level, sorry, because the fact that we are national and you are not national legitimize all the discourse, the political discourse, the hate speeches also against migration, or the Italian first, American first, the Singaporeans first, no? And this is what Sayad and Glickskiller, when she speak about the container model of society, but the Chicago School also was telling us about the outsider, no, the who is an outsider and who has more rights because he is considered as an insider. The issue of being this political order we have on our of our world now, that is a division in national states, is at the root of the legitimization of some form of exclusion against migrants. Since the migrant is not a citizen of the nation has less rights somehow. Of course, the main right that is not provided to migrants is also the right to vote, no? But the erosion of rights is something more subtle, also because of the perception I was mentioning before. You perfectly know how people become citizen of a country. The two main and traditional ways of assigning citizenship to people is ius soli or ius sanguinis, and of course by naturalization for migrants staying in a country for a while, with a lot of different laws in different countries. But what I wanted to stress is that at the urban level, it's not so important for migrants to be entitled to all the citizenship, rights. Like, for example, the right to vote for national election is not something that is a priority, let's say. And that's why also many migrants, even when get a permanent legal permit to stay, do not ask for citizenship, no, because they have a permanent status, and are not are okay with that, and they can live easily in the city where they live. But there is an interesting revival in the last years of urban citizenship against national citizenship. Providing people living in cities a substantive citizenship right. Citizenship as resident of the city. Among many, an interesting proposal is this of adding a ius domicili, that is full access, a registration in some countries, also in some cities. Local administration have proposed urban IDs to access all the services independently from the status or the migration background of people. So the idea of citizenship as residents of the cities rather than residents of the nation is an interesting issue to explore and to take ahead for research, for example. Okay, I'll skip this. Spatial concentration. I was telling you that spatial issues when diversity is growing in the city are very important. I will not focus today on settlement patterns because there is not much time. So ethnic clustering, deprived neighborhoods, or concentration of people with migrant backgrounds in some peripheries, etc. But we will delve a little bit more in the issue of accessibility and different uses of public spaces. Often in both the big issues of concerning spatial concentration at the local level, we have opposite approaches. I mean, at the two edges, no, then you have a full set of gray between black and white position, gray, sorry. Policies and practices, but the two opposite approaches normally are on the one side control, law and order, and urban security concerning differences, while the opposite approach is working on recognition, also exchange, dialogue, and urban safety rather than security. For going to the issue of public spaces and diversity, public spaces are those spaces in the city where we get in touch on daily basis with differences, and where we also see the transformation along the years of the urban societies where we live. Of course, for cities, public spaces are key spaces. The cities actually originated from public spaces, and the functions that different people, as Aristotle was saying us, no, you need different people to make a city, and these people normally interact in public spaces. So there is no city without public spaces. But of course, public space is not something is always changing depending on how societies are changing. So we can say that space is always within the cities socially produced, is produced by a different society, produce different kind of spaces and different types of cities. In the ancient Greece, we had the agora, the main square where everything was decided and everything was done. The commerce, the political, the religious was condensed in that space. Today, we have multicentric cities with different important public spaces and other minor public spaces, but is much more complex. What is important in terms of city and diversity is that in public spaces are those spaces where we learn since when we are kids the rules of the games, of staying, how to behave, what to do, what not to do in the society we live in. No? So it's in the public spaces where we acquire the expert knowledge about how our society work. And it's where we build our cultural capital. No? Having cities where people is coming from different places around the world, and they where these people acquired their expert knowledge in places where maybe something is different, it's a great challenge for all cities experiencing international migration. But once again, public spaces are those spaces where we can negotiate differences and build once again a cultural capital that is always, I was telling before, urban societies are ever changing and evolving. No? So also these new this negotiation of differences in public space led to new rituals, codes of conducts of everyday life. As I was telling you before, growing diversity in city at the local level has normally two opposite reaction. On the one side, anxious and in the middle, a lot of mild reactions among the two. But on the one side, we have rejection, anxiety, suspicion against migrant normally, because the also urban landscape that was familiar changes, ethnic shop instead of the traditional shop, people of different backgrounds using the space in new or uses of spaces. I don't know, for example, in Italy, having people playing cricket in public parks was something pretty new when migration from India and Bangladesh started. Before, soccer was the only thing people was playing around. And increasing diversity can also make people feeling lose control over their territory. On the other side, there can be curiosity, willingness to welcome differences, also awareness that change cannot be stopped. As I was telling before, we cannot choose of if being or not multicultural we are, so we have to manage it. And also migration can be seen as an opportunity to expand our cultural capital. In terms of urban governance, these two different feelings translate in, on the one side, rejection of change and resistance to contamination. On the other side, opens to multiculturalism and valorization of differences. On the two edges, let's say migration, in case of rejection, is normally framed as an emergency, We have the emergency of migration. We have emergency at school because there are a lot of too much. Normally, is the speech. Foreign students. It's an emergency because we are hosting too much asylum seeker, etc. On the other way around, when there is more openness to multiculturalism, migration is framed as a structural phenomena rather than an emergency and something that has to be governed. So when you frame migration as an emergency, normally the local laws you focus on are those focusing on urban security, law and order, that led to the invisibilization of the people you are scared of or not willing to accommodate in the city. While on the other way around, when you consider that migration is a structural element of urban society, you work on equal opportunities and rights, on cultural mediation, and the policies and the effects of the policy are visibility of these differences rather than invisibilization of migrants. In terms of public spaces, often we have also conflicts, and this is an interesting conflict over the use of public space, in this case is parks, by migrants in Italy, and this to give you an example of what I was saying of the two possible different approach, law and order or mediation, and the recognition of the new demands for the city. The problem here was that migrants often make big barbecues in the parks. We are not used to, people here in the urban parks goes to run or to take the dog or to take kids to play in the playgrounds. There is let's say, wide availability also of private garden in the houses. So people, if want to organize a barbecue, do it in its backyard rather than in the park. With the growth of migration, a lot of migrants were using the parks for meeting and for barbecuing. Different institutional reaction to this need, let's say, because it was simply a need of space to do something, The two typical political approaches at the local level is, on the one side, to forbid no barbecue, no drinks. It's forbidden to use any kind of fire in the park, controlled by the police, so authoritative response. On the other way around, in many places, there was a different approach to this emergence of new need for space by migrants using parks for barbecues. That was to try to accommodate differences in some parks. This is a case in Turin. Local administration decided to activate a process with the groups of migrants who each Sunday were organizing barbecues in the park. They designed specific tools, provided the park with barbecue areas, first of all, so you don't hang around or make fire on the grass, but you have a proper space for cooking and eating. But they also activated a process with the migrant community to be sure that they were cleaning after that they were self-taxing themselves like 1-2 euros each time to contribute to municipal collection of garbage after these big barbecues to control, the alcohol level and to be sure that people participating to this barbecue was not disturbing other users of the park. So a big work of cultural mediation, but responding to the need of a place to do barbecue, even if it was in the parks. So often forbid when you get into a park, it's like forbidden to do everything. But what is important in cities of differences is that if you at the local level, the local administration try to forbid or exclude some people from public spaces, you erode the rights of all the community. I mean, if you don't want migrants to make a barbecue in a park, if some young people who do not have space for make a barbecue and are Italian, they also cannot do a barbecue in the park because it's forbidden for all. This is very interesting policy, let's say, that arose in some cities in Padua, in Italy, northern Italy, during the so-called migration crisis in 2015-16, when larger numbers of asylum seekers were arriving in Europe. And this icon, blue icon you see with the adult and the kid, was the introduction of a new rule in the parks that was actually saying that adults can enter the parks only if accompanied by a minor, by a kid. And this was a strategy, of course, for the Italian constitution, this overt discrimination is forbidden, luckily. But we had at that time a lot of sub-Saharan young guys hanging around the city while waiting for their asylum response. No, they were asylum seeker waiting in this limbo many times for 1-2 years to understand if their application was accepted or not, and they were often hanging around in parks. So, of course, it couldn't have openly forbidden. An administration cannot say we don't want. It's forbidden the access to young Black Africans because it's overt discrimination. But in doing this, they were saying only adults can enter the park only if they are with the kid. And so these guys were mainly only men, and it was made this new rule exactly for keeping them out of the park, because people was disturbed by their presence doing nothing during the day. Of course, this is erosion of the rights for all, because okay, the young sub-Saharan African has no kid and cannot go to the park, but also, the old man or woman who has no young nephew, or the couple of young students who want to go to the park. So this sort of hostile architecture also it's something that is conceived to keep some people out from public space. Also, this for not laying down in the benches or not sit somewhere. It's called hostile architecture. I'm nearly, I believe I don't have much time, Pelin. How long?
Actually, you have 10 minutes to go.
Okay, so it's fine. Besides open spaces, public spaces in the city include also the public services, actually, no? Because we have also public services are public spaces where we that we share as residents, and when the urban society become more and more diverse, also public services would need to adapt to diversity. Public services, I mean schools, healthcare facilities, but the library, the civic center, whatever you can have in mind. Normally, when we use this particular part of public spaces, we are termed as user, no? We are users of these public spaces. And of course, these public spaces are a little bit less open than other open air public spaces, because they have rules, opening hours, also behavioral rules, but this is often applied even to open public spaces. I mean, in a city square, normally I can go whatever time of the day, of the night, because it's really open. In a park, many times there is a fence and you can go in just during the opening hours. In any case, with public services, this is a very another great challenge to accommodate differences in and to ensure the right to the city, and so the access to public services to all the residents of the city. Migration is really a challenge to reframe how, in part, not totally, reframe how our public services are conceived, actually. And so, once again, even here, there is a need for redefine and negotiate some rules, or some also way of delivering services exactly for accommodating differences. There are different tools and measures that can help accommodating differences, that are from the translation, cultural linguistic mediation, but also training courses for service provided to be skilled to deal with multicultural groups of users, but there are handbooks or other creative tools. In any case, this is a really important part of public spaces at the city level that are important for the real inclusion of on equal basis and the real access on equal basis of migrants to the right to the city. We speak about school, where there are not just in Italy, all around Europe, but even in other countries, you know, experiences migration. You have many projects in school to know each other, to yes, to understand that difference is an opportunity rather than a problem, etc. But in school, for example, also when you have the school canteen, the canteen have to adapt to the different cultures arriving from other countries. No? For example, once again, for Italy was not needed ages ago when I went to school a lot of years ago, the primary, secondary school. There was no need of having particular menu because people was not eating pork or halal or whatever. There was ham for everybody. Ham was for everybody. Now the services have to adapt to a difference also of users. And this is also for healthcare facilities. And in that case, it's always more and more important to understand cultural differences, but also to understand what people need, no? Because in the medical field, if you do not, if you are not able to communicate with the newcomers, for example, it might be a great problem, no? For assisting patients. And so a lot of tools, once again, to manage differences in healthcare services, but also libraries more and more in cities experiencing increasing migration. Multilingual libraries are being set because not just the book on the language of the country you are, but mixed book also in the languages of the main groups of migrants, no? And the same for the activities that libraries promote. Last but not least, very quickly, also another important space, public spaces of the city are very important also for form public opinion, for protest or for asking for rights, even if the deliberative use of public spaces at least in Western country, has declined over the year because the arena for political debate is much more shift into the media and new media. No, we know it's nowadays it's very rare that a politician go in the square to make a discourse to the people. They make it on television. They have their social with all the problem, social media with all the problem of fake news, of hate speech that we know. In any case, urban public spaces are still important places for normally claiming rights or protest. And in case of migration, once again, against or welcoming migrants. On the top, you can see a protest for by host society refusing and rejecting differences and new challenges. No more mosques, no refugees, no multiculturalism, etc. But also there are in the public space demonstration about by local host society welcoming migrants or helping them to access, claiming for them the equal access to the city. And the same is the same spaces are used by migrants themselves many times to get ahead, to ask for the respect of their rights. In the case of the bottom pictures you see, these were in Italy. Yes, they are all in Italy, where of course Muslim is not the main religion. No, here is mainly Catholic, and these were actually protests against the ostracism that we often have here in Italy against the opening of a place of worship for religious minorities. So it was a demonstration to say praying in the main square, the bottom right is in front of the Dome in Milan, and the one in the middle is in Rome, in front of a big, important monument. But was not the need was not to praise, not the Ramadan, was actually a joint initiative to ask for the recognition of the need for places of worship, because they are really obstaculated in this country. New openings or the opening of places of worship for religious minorities. So at the end of all this, it's clear that migration at the local level is really a challenge for government and for other actors contributing to urban governance. Invisibility is problematic. I mean, trying to not see the problem and make migrants invisible. Hypervisibility is also problematic, because we have the right to difference, but also the right to indifference. It's important. And so to build a more inclusive city, it's always important working in including the voice of minorities, not as, oh, poor guys, they need support, etc., in paternalistic way, but as equals. And it's important to consider migrants as part of the society and not as societies apart. Finally, for cities, growing diversity is for sure a challenge, but we always have to push on the fact, I mean, to raise awareness and also to raise awareness among policymakers, etc., that migration is also an opportunity. And is an opportunity in different fields. I mean, it's an opportunity for socio-cultural development, because you know, as I say, the cities are always have always been a mix of differences, and that's the power of city. Let's say it's from where innovation, the encounter among different cultures, experiences, way of framing the world is always leading to innovation and progress, let's say. But another opportunity concerns economic development, because migrants living in our cities can be bridges for international relations, no, trading networks, and cosmopolitan cities, on the other way around, often attract tourism, investments, etc. But it's also an opportunity for democratic development, because working on more vulnerable groups, and actually migrants, not all of them, but a large share of migrants fall into those groups which who are more vulnerable to discrimination. But working for equal rights for the most vulnerable groups means to work for equal rights for all, let's say. No, if you try to work for the more vulnerable and make sure that his or her access to the right to the city is on equal basis, you will have a more democratic city for all. And that's it for now. So if you have any question or comment, more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much, Giovanna, for this very